A study published in Cell Host and Microbe found that gut microbiome diversity in adults over 60 was directly and independently predictive of lean muscle mass in the lower body, accounting for differences that could not be explained by diet, exercise, or hormone levels alone. Not what you eat. Stopped me when I first read it, because it reframes everything most people believe about why their legs are getting weaker. Most physicians, when you see a patient with weakening legs, will talk about exercise, muscle mass, maybe a referral to physical therapy. What they rarely discuss is the gut. And that is a significant omission, because the gut is the primary interface between everything you eat and every biological process that depends on those nutrients, including the maintenance, repair, and growth of the muscle tissue in your legs. When gut function declines, and it does systematically and measurably, beginning in your mid-40s, the downstream effects reach every system in the body. But skeletal muscle is among the first and most visible casualties. The legs are usually where it shows up first. Today, I am going to walk you through 6 specific foods that target the gut-muscle axis precisely. We are counting down from 6 to 1, from genuinely powerful to clinically transformational. And I will tell you right now, the food at number 1. Something you may already have in your kitchen. Something researchers are calling one of the most underutilized muscle protective compounds in the world. I am saving it for last, because once you understand the mechanism, you will never think about this food the same way again. Before we go any further, tell me in the comments, how old are you? And when did you first start noticing changes in your legs? Heaviness in the morning. Stairs that feel steeper than they used to. Getting up from the floor taking more effort than it once did. I read every reply on this channel, and your answer helps me understand exactly what to cover next. Now, let us begin. Number 6, eggs. I want you to set aside everything you have been told about eggs for the last 30 years. Because the conversation around cholesterol has buried something that matters far more for adults over 60 who are watching their legs get weaker. Eggs are one of the most concentrated dietary sources of leucine available to you. Leucine is the molecular signal that activates muscle protein synthesis, the trigger that tells your muscle cells to repair, to rebuild, to maintain their mass. Without adequate leucine, that signal is either absent or too weak to overcome the increasing biological resistance that aging muscle tissue develops to anabolic signals. Researchers call this anabolic resistance. After 65, your muscles do not respond to protein the way they once did. They become, in a sense, hard of hearing. They need a louder signal. Leucine is that louder signal. 2 large whole eggs deliver approximately 1.08 grams of leucine, a dose that research from the University of Illinois found was sufficient to meaningfully stimulate muscle protein synthesis, even in older adults with significant anabolic resistance. But here is where the gut-muscle axis enters in a way most discussions about eggs completely miss. The yolk, the part many people were told to discard, contains choline, a critical precursor to acetylcholine, the primary neurotransmitter of the gut-brain axis. When choline intake is inadequate, gut motility slows. The mucosal barrier weakens, and the gut's ability to extract and deliver amino acids to peripheral tissues, including muscle, is significantly impaired. Not just nutritional content, it is gut infrastructure support. Let me tell you about a patient I will call Margaret. She was 74, from a coastal town in Florida. She came to me after her second fall in 6 months. She was genuinely frightened of her own staircase. She had been on a low-fat diet for over a decade, almost no eggs, because an older physician had told her to be cautious. We added 3 whole-fat eggs to her morning routine and addressed the underlying gut dysbiosis that had developed doing years of insufficient choline intake. 8 weeks later, she told me she walked up her stairs without holding the railing for the first time in 2 years. Margaret is a composite of several patients I think I've seen with nearly identical presentations. The details vary. The pattern does not. 2 to 3 whole eggs in the morning, cooked gently in olive oil or over low heat. Never dry scramble them at high heat. The fat you cook them in matters. Several key compounds in the yolk are fat soluble, and their absorption depends on the presence of dietary fat. Number 5. Wild-caught salmon. If your legs ache when you wake up in the morning, cramp at night, or feel heavier than they should after minimal activity, there is a very good possibility that chronic low-grade inflammation is the mechanism at work. And I want to explain why that inflammation is, in many cases, a gut problem expressing itself as a leg problem. One of the most reliable consequences of a compromised gut barrier is the translocation of bacterial endotoxins, specifically lipopolysaccharides, from the gut lumen into the bloodstream. These endotoxins activate systemic inflammatory pathways that target multiple tissues simultaneously. Skeletal muscle is one of the primary tools. Interleukin-6, tumor necrosis factor alpha, do not just cause discomfort. They actively interfere with muscle protein synthesis and accelerate the. Salmon is one of the most potent dietary modulators of that inflammatory cascade. The EPA and DHA it contains are directly incorporated into cell membranes, phospholipids throughout the body, including the cells lining the gut. They reduce intestinal permeability, improve mucosal barrier function, and simultaneously suppress the inflammatory signaling that was damaging muscle tissue downstream. You are addressing the cause and the consequence in a single food. A study from the University of Aberdeen followed 87 adults over the age of 65 for 18 weeks. The group consuming omega-3 fatty acids equivalent to approximately 3 servings of wild salmon per week experienced a 22% increase in muscle protein synthesis rate compared to controls. That is from a fish, not a pharmaceutical, a fish. Wild. Salmon is also a meaningful dietary source of vitamin D3. A single serving of wild-caught sockeye delivers up to 900 international units. Research published in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology has linked vitamin D deficiency, affecting an estimated 77% of adults over 65 with impaired muscle contractile function, poor balance, and accelerated muscle loss. 2 to 3 servings per week. Wild-caught is not optional. Farm salmon has a dramatically different omega-3 to omega-6 ratio and does not provide the same anti-inflammatory profile. Number 4, spinach and dark leafy greens. There is a molecule called nitric oxide that functions as the primary vasodilatory signal in your circulation. When nitric oxide levels are adequate, blood vessels open, blood flows efficiently, and the capillary network's feeding. Your leg muscles receive oxygen and nutrients at the rate those muscles need them. When nitric oxide production declines, and it does measurably, beginning around age 40 and accelerating after 70, muscle tissue in the legs begins to function like a garden on a water restriction. What most people do not realize is that nitric oxide production is also a gut-dependent process. Dietary nitrates found in high concentrations in spinach, kale, arugula, and Swiss chard are converted to nitrite by bacteria in the oral cavity and upper GI tract, then converted to nitric oxide in the low oxygen environment of working muscle tissue. When gut dysbiosis is present, that conversion is impaired and nitric oxide production falls even when dietary nitrate intake is adequate. Researchers at the Karolinska Institute in Sweden found that inorganic nitrate at doses equivalent to approximately 200 grams of spinach improved skeletal muscle efficiency in older individuals, adults by 19%. The muscle did not grow larger, it simply became more efficient at using the oxygen already arriving. The engine was the same. The fuel system was better calibrated. Spinach is also one of the most concentrated dietary sources of magnesium, involved in over 300 enzymatic actions in the body, including the regulation of muscle contraction and relaxation. Approximately 68% of adults over 60 are chronically deficient in it. The nocturnal leg cramps, the morning stiffness, the feet that curl involuntarily at night, these are frequently magnesium presentations. 1 cup of cooked spinach delivers approximately 157 milligrams, roughly 37% of your daily requirement in a single serving. Always cook your leafy greens in a quality fat. The fat-soluble compounds they contain require dietary fat for absorption. A dry steamed spinach is nutritionally inferior to a spinach sautéed in olive oil. This is not preference, that is chemistry. Before we get to the top 3, I want to pause here, because at this point in the video, that is chemistry. I already know what some of you are thinking. I already eat reasonably well. I have salmon sometimes, I have eggs, I take a magnesium supplement, and my legs are still getting weaker. I hear this constantly. And I want to be direct with you about why this happens, because it is not a failure of effort, it is a failure of delivery. You can eat the right foods and still not rebuild muscle if the gut infrastructure delivering those nutrients to your tissues is compromised. The amino acids from your salmon, the magnesium from your spinach, the leucine from your eggs, all of it passes through a gut system that, after 60, is significantly less efficient at extraction, conversion, and delivery than it was at 40. Eating the right foods is necessary, but restoring the gut environment that processes those foods is what closes the gap. That is what items 3, 2, and 1 address directly. And I will tell you right now, what I share at number 1 about olive oil and the mTOR pathway is something most people, including most physicians, do not fully understand. Stay with me. Number 3, full-fat Greek yogurt. Full-fat Greek yogurt is the most accessible, evidence-supported probiotic food for most people, and it is dramatically underutilized as a muscle-building tool in adults over 60. It contains 17 to 20 grams of highly bioavailable protein with an amino acid profile that includes meaningful leucine. But what elevates it above a simple protein source is its probiotic population, primarily lactobacillus and bifidobacterium strains, that directly influences nutrient extraction efficiency in the gut. Research from the University of California, Davis found that gut microbiome diversity in older adults was directly correlated with lean muscle mass in the lower extremities, faster recovery from physical. The gut does not just absorb nutrients, it determines how much of the protein, the amino acids, the minerals you consume actually reach the tissues that need them. After 65, a compromised microbiome is one of the primary reasons you can eat adequate protein and still lose muscle mass. The delivery system is failing. Greek yogurt helps restore it. Consume it within 30 to 45 minutes of any physical activity, even a short walk. Add ground flaxseed for additional omega-3 support. Always choose plain, full-fat versions. The low-fat varieties substitute the fat with added sugar, which directly fuels the inflammatory environment we are working to reverse. Number 2. Beets. The research behind beets and physical performance in aging adults is, in my clinical view, one of the most underreported stories in geriatric nutrition. We established with spinach that dietary nitrates improve muscle efficiency through nitric oxide production. Beets contain dietary nitrates at concentrations 3 to 4 times higher per gram than any leafy green. But what researchers at Wake Forest University found goes beyond peripheral circulation. Older adults who consumed beet juice, equivalent to 2 medium beets, before moderate exercise, showed a 38% increase in blood flow to the white matter regions of the brain associated equivalent to 2 medium beets, before moderate exercise, showed a 38% increase in blood flow to the white matter regions of the brain associated with motor control. That is not a leg finding. That is a brain finding with direct leg implications. The coordination, the timing, the neuromuscular communication between your brain and your legs that erodes progressively with age, beets appear to support the vascular infrastructure that pathway depends on. Beets also contain betaine, a compound that reduces homocysteine levels in the blood. Elevated homocysteine, affecting approximately 47% of adults over 60, is independently associated with accelerated a car with a failing battery. Let me tell you about a patient I will call Elena. She was 68, retired from a career in She came to me having been told by 3 separate physicians that her leg weakness and chronic fatigue were simply the natural consequence of aging. After addressing the underlying gut permeability contributing to her systemic inflammation, we added 2 roasted beets to her lunch 4 days a week and introduced a short daily walk. 12 weeks later, she returned to my office without the cane she had been using. She had started gardening again. Elena is a composite of patients I have treated with overlapping presentations. The specifics vary. The trajectory does not. Roast your beets at 400 degrees for 45 to 6 minutes. Do not boil them for extended periods. The water-soluble nitrates leach out. Pair beets with a lean protein source and you have one of the most effective pre-activity meals available for the aging body. And now, number 1. The opening. The one that researchers are calling one of the most powerful muscle protective compounds available to humans over 60. The one that has been sitting in kitchens across the world, largely misunderstood. While millions of people lost muscle mass they did not need to lose. Number 1. Extra virgin olive fat oil. I know some of you expected something exotic, a novel compound, a recent discovery. I want you to stay with me, because what I'm about to explain about extra virgin olive oil and the aging muscular system will fundamentally reframe how you think about fat, inflammation, and the architecture of a strong body. Extra virgin olive oil contains a compound called oleocanthal, a polyphenol that inhibits the same inflammatory enzymes, COX, ibuprofen, and other non-steroidal anti-inflammatory medications. The mechanism is functionally identical. The difference is that oleocanthal does this associated with long-term NSAID use, risks that are disproportionately severe in adults over 65 who are among the most frequently prescribed these medications. But the muscle-specific mechanism goes deeper than anti-inflammation. The polyphenols in extra virgin olive oil, over 30 distinct ones, the mTOR pathway is the primary biological switch for muscle protein synthesis. It is the same pathway activated by leucine, the same pathway activated by resistance exercise, the same pathway anabolic hormones support. Olive oil polyphenols activate it independently. They do not require exercise. They do not require elevated hormone levels. They function at the cellular level regardless of the physiological context around them. After 70, mTOR sensitivity in skeletal muscle decreases by approximately 40%. That is a significant part of why muscle building becomes harder with age, not just reduced protein intake or less exercise, but a diminished capacity of the cellular machinery to respond to anabolic signals at all. Extra virgin olive oil is one of the very few dietary compounds with evidence suggesting it can partially restore that sensitivity. A study from the University of Athens, published in Clinical Nutrition, followed 840 adults over 6'5" for 3 years. Those who consumed a minimum of 4 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil daily showed a 37% lower total. Research from the University of Jaén in Spain found that 37% from olive oil incidence of sarcopenia compared to those who rarely consumed it. Hydroxytyrosol, another polyphenol found abundantly in extra virgin olive oil, protects mitochondrial DNA in muscle cells from oxidative damage. The copies become degraded. Muscle cells produce less energy, recover more slowly, and eventually become dysfunctional. Hydroxytyrosol. And then there is the gut dimension, which is where all 6 of these foods come back together. Extra virgin olive oil selectively promotes the growth of bifidobacterium and lactobacillus strains in the gut microbiome while suppressing populations of pro-inflammatory bacteria. It acts as a prebiotic at the level of the gut ecosystem. When you consume 4 tablespoons of high-quality extra virgin olive oil daily alongside the other foods on this list, you are not eating 6 individual foods. You are building an integrated gut environment that maximizes your body's ability to extract, deliver, and use every nutrient that matters for muscle tissue maintenance. That is the gut-muscle axis, operating as a system. 4 tablespoons daily is the evidence-based target. Use it as your primary cooking fat for low to medium heat. Buy it in dark glass bottles from producers who list a harvest date, not just an expiration date. Polyphenol content degrades with time and light exposure. Fresh extra virgin olive oil is biologically active. Old olive oil in a clear plastic bottle on a discount shelf is just fat. Here is how I would approach this practically. Start with breakfast. 3 whole eggs in olive oil with a handful of spinach, sauteed alongside them. That is numbers 1, 6, and 4 working together in a single meal, and it takes under 10 minutes. Add a cup of full-fat Greek yogurt mid-morning. 2 to 3 times a week, make wild salmon the centerpiece of lunch or dinner, paired with roasted beets. Your gut microbiome begins responding to dietary changes within 72 hours. Measurable improvements in intestinal permeability, 6 weeks of consistent dietary change. Structural muscle improvements typically require 8 to 12 weeks. The biology does not stop working with age. It slows, it needs better inputs, it needs a healthier gut environment to translate those inputs into tissue. But it does not stop. That is not encouragement. That is the published evidence. The studies referenced in this video are linked in the description below. Bring them to your physician. Use them as the basis for a real conversation about what nutrition interventions make sense for your specific situation. Now tell me in the comments, which of these 6 foods are you adding first? And if you want to go deeper on the gut-brain axis connection to muscle recovery, because what happens overnight during sleep is a significant part of this story that we did not cover today. That video is next. Watch it before you sleep tonight. Until next time, feed your gut, protect your muscle, and never accept that the way things are is the way they have to stay.